Worst Things First podcast is where ordinary people have the type of conversations that reveal the extraordinary in all of us. Every walk of life has a downside. Now let's start at the bottom. And if you hear this rhyme, then you already know the time. You are back with WTFP, Worst Things First podcast. Today's guest, a practitioner of the healing arts, Goddess. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm great. I'm really excited about this particular episode. I know there's a ton of things that you're doing and a very eventful path and journey you're on, and I want to hear about that. But I actually want to start somewhere and circle back to that because I think we have the opportunity and a platform to allow for some education for our audience, myself as well, and particularly those of us who may be cis-gendered individuals in today's society, and really everyone. Correct me if I'm wrong, so I want to make sure I'm using the correct terminology, but if my understanding is correct, and for our audience who doesn't understand, when I refer to cisgendered, me being a cisgendered male means that I actually identify with the same gender that I was assigned at birth. Mm-hmm. And so being assigned as a male, I actually do identify as male. And that's actually separate from my sexuality. I do happen to be heterosexual, but that's not necessarily the same thing. Am I correct thus far in what I've stated?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because a couple of weeks back, I was speaking at a high school. It was artists working through activism, encouraging diversity, how to combat racism in the form of microaggressions and all types of other stuff, right? And I remember that as we were going around the room before we start, and this was a thing led by students and one teacher, and they did a good job. They had myself and Will Keeps, one other individual there. And as we went around the room, they said, let's make sure we name everyone's name, their pronouns, and what school they attend.
Yes.
Right. And so we went around the room and we did that. And I actually think now, if I remember correctly, both Will and myself subconsciously didn't actually even speak to the him, the he and the his that I actually do identify with. I think somehow I said, hey, my name is Fate. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm from here, boom, 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 and that's the rap. I didn't think about it until later on, and I'll tell you where that later on came up at. So fast forward to you and I are in conversation and contact about doing this particular episode, and you said at some point, Fade, I've heard you say that you don't necessarily always know a lot about the guests, and you asked a very fair question. Wouldn't it make sense for us to perhaps connect and you learn a bit about me? That way you know who you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. On the surface, that makes perfect fucking sense, right? Except for me, the beauty of this platform is that the audience has the opportunity to learn right along with me. And so I remember saying to you, well, damn, isn't that what we want the audience to hear as well? If I'm going to learn something or there's going to be context that's going to provide the foundation for our conversation, shouldn't they be privy to it as well? Mm. And then I said, but what I will need from you, though, is how we should describe you, how we should frame you, because we have to do that for each episode. And you asked, are you asking my name, my pronouns, and my career field? I said, yes, that's exactly what I'm asking. And your response was, my name is Goddess. I am a practitioner of the healing arts. And my pronouns are them, they, and their.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
I'm also a witchy bitch. Can I cuss on this?
Please.
Okay, I'm a witchy bitch. Can I add that? Okay.
Please.
I'm going to.
So what I want to give you the opportunity to do, because there was a very insightful moment that my family had here in-house as we learned about one of the letters when you hear about the LGBTQIA plus acronym. We went doing some digging and searching because we had some questions and some furrowed browed looks ourselves at one point. And the other day we had some great insight. And so I want to talk about something we discovered that day, but I first want to give you the opportunity because you are my first guest who has requested pronouns outside of what they were gender assigned, at least as we understand it to be. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was like, damn, this episode just got that much more dope. You know what I'm saying? Because now there's another angle of insight that people get to learn from and be informed from. And so I'll shut up for a second. And what I'd like to hear from you is your own thoughts or explanation as to why that applies so other people can understand, this is a scenario in which someone may feel that way.
Mm-hmm. So when you say why that applies, explain why I identify as what I do, or explain how you can introduce that or make a space into which you can talk about that, because it's very different questions. Maybe
imagine that when you said my pronouns are them, they, and their. Imagine that I had said, well, what do you mean? Answer that question.
Okay. Well, I would actually, because I try not to. I will for the sake of this podcast. But if we were introduced on the street and I didn't know you, I would say, well, it's actually really interesting. You should Google it, because I don't do the emotional labor of other people,
right?
Or educate them unless we fam. I love you. But for the sake of this podcast, I would answer that I'm non-binary. I don't identify as male or female, and I can't speak for other non-binary folks. But for me, that means that I'm a wonderful, beautiful combination of both. At the core of me, I am a spirit, and spirits don't have genders. And I've lived many lifetimes in various forms.
Gotcha.
So in order to acknowledge all of that experience and the sentient being that I am, they, them, there.
Dope. Okay.
Yeah.
That's ill. That's ill because it actually provides yet another layer to one chapter that we started to open. And that's what I was speaking to when I referenced the piece of insight we found when we were sitting the other day as a family, myself and my daughter. Mind you, my daughter's involved in some wonderful programs here in Des Moines, Urban Leadership, Movement 515, Run DSM. Shout out to Emily Lang, Christopher Rowlands, and all the teachers that get down with all that, and all the students that rock with that, the Teen Summit and all that sort of thing. They do a lot of cool shit where they have things like town hall discussions, and the town hall discussions they're emceed by the kids, they're led by the kids. The kids do the DJing, the kids do the flyer promotion for it, and then discussions are on things like school to prison pipeline, LGBT rights, Black Girl Magic, immigrant issues. They study people like, Cesar Chavez, Yuriko Chiyama, you know what I mean? James Baldwin, things of this sort.
How long has this been going on?
Man, you don't get me lying. Don't get me up here lying, but I
don't remember that.
I've been working with them, I think since 2014, and that's actually how I ended up beginning to do the graffiti workshops, the 8-week graffiti workshops at Central Campus.
That's amazing.
But these people they set the groundwork for sure. And so as a result of that, we've been exposed to a greater advocacy for people in the LGBTQ community. I apologize if I'm leaving some out. I'm getting educated right now, right? So the other day we were like, well, hold on, man. What do all the other letters mean, though, right? And so we went to actually go look up and do our own research and see, like, can we hear from people from the community so maybe we can actually understand instead of just being like, man, y'all doing too much. You know what I'm saying? One of the letters is I. We ended up on a YouTube channel that I frequent quite often right now, and I actually recommend people should go check it out. It's called Special Books by Special Kids. All right. And the YouTube channel, it just has testimonials from kids and usually parents as well on all types of issues. It could be those living with autism. It could be those living with Down syndrome, easily broken bones, multi-personality disorder, OCD, schizophrenia.
Okay, like another type of like reading rainbow almost?
But it's the kids really talking about their lives living in that condition.
Okay.
How they've been coping with it, how they navigate it. And in some of those instances, there's a parent as well, depending on how young the kid is. There was one episode that helped me in particular because they've said for a long time I'm on the spectrum for antisocial personality disorder. Not all the way to the sociopath end of things, although sometimes I don't give a fuck if I see a baby die on TV. But somewhere on the spectrum. But I'm just saying somewhere on the spectrum, right? Needless to say, suffice it to say that this channel can be insightful because you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouths, what it's like to be in their position. And so one thing we came across was someone living with Turner syndrome. And this is something that affects girls only. They described it in that episode as a condition where someone gender assigned as a girl is missing an X chromosome. But in doing a little further research, I think to be more specific, in many cases, it's just they're missing certain genetic material that would normally be found on an X chromosome. And in the very extreme end of the spectrum, the entire copy of the X chromosome is missing, right? Okay. 99% of these births end in miscarriage, 1% survive. Those that survive are known to have Turner syndrome. The young individuals stated that while she was assigned the gender of female at birth, she literally did not feel that way. And scientifically, she was missing an X chromosome. Normally, boys are XY, women are XX. And so she said, because of that, I surely don't feel female. I am what is essentially known as intersex. And dude, when she said that, we all looked in the room, everybody in the room looked at each other and was like, dude, that makes perfect fucking sense. You know what I'm saying? It makes perfect sense for there to be another folder in the Rolodex of all the different types of potential types of categories that someone may fall into. It's not so easily boxed into a binary system.
Right.
And so all I can say is that illustrated it for us. Gotcha. Right? And it made us say, oh, that's what one of those letters means. Makes sense to me. What you've explained to me gives me yet another layer to that same, you know what I mean? That same chapter and movie. Right. And so again, here I go talking again.
Well, it puts a face with the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you. So, practitioner of the healing arts. This is Worst Things First podcast. So we're going to have to know what the down and dirty and worst part of that is. But first off, can you define it for us?
Ooh, practitioner of the healing arts. So some people would say I'm a healer. And after a lot of self-reflection, I do not identify as a healer because I make space for healing work to happen. Conduit, if you may, but we all are healers and we all have the capacity to be so. It's how connected you are and in tune with your body. Yes. That allows for that to be flow a little bit more easily. So that's why I don't like to be called healer, because there's also a power dynamic there that I'm not trying to do. I'm not trying to repeat the system with the master's tools. Yeah. No, thank you. So yeah, I say a practitioner of the healing arts. That runs the gambit. So I went to school at ironically, the Healing Arts Institute in Fort Collins, Colorado. Okay. Where I learned massage. And I pair that now with my energy work. So some abilities that I've had from birth and have honed through various tutelage and my own practice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So
let me ask you something. Because we loosely know each other.
Yes.
Right? Do you have any, before I go any further, do you have any comments on that? How that came to be, or what the dynamic is to that at all?
Do you want to say
I don't know what either one of us, our fucking ideas of it is.
Well, I mean, I saw you. Oh, okay. Well, actually, you probably don't know how I first heard about you.
Okay.
So I was on my way to Central Academy or campus. I went to both. I can't remember. And we went on the bus with some Holy Family kids. And this cute little boy with Coke bottle glasses, definitely white, was like, yo, have you heard of Max of the Blue? I'm like, no. I was really into punk rock. And then he played me something by y'all, and I was like, holy crap.
What?
I'm hooked. What? And so that's
what year was this?
Oh my gosh. I don't even remember. I was in middle school.
Okay.
And I'm 27 now.
So. The one thing I remember is I thought, I could be wrong about this, but I thought like a relative or two of yours may be coming up from a time or two and be like, hey man, let me get one of your CDs. My niece is a big fan, yada yada yada. And side note, non-binary version of that is nibbling. But I don't like that. Like, I want to figure out a different one, but that's common. Nibbling. So what are your thoughts on this? Because here's, so hold on a second. This is going to be we're going to get it all out in this combo. Because this is one thing this is going to be dope. All right, so check this out. Let me make a note so I don't fucking forget about this one piece. So I looked back in retrospect the other day, because this was the first instance in which I had to prepare to utilize the pronouns of they, them, and theirs. Mm-hmm. And I just I did sort of a self-analysis of the moment in which that came back into my inbox and I received it. And I had to, as the host of the podcast, intake that information, assimilate it, and decide, okay, what I was going to do with it, how it made me feel, and all that sort of thing. And I was pleasantly pleased to feel that, like, I didn't feel anything. It was like, okay, cool. Now I know exactly how to refer to them. Boom. So that's not going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. I won't disappoint them. And also, here's the career. And then boom. And I was ready to move on, right? Mm-hmm. And then I mentioned it to someone that day, and someone was like, well, how are you going to be able to do that? And so I was like, well, I'll just have to. And so I started to actually try to practice right then and there, right? And it was kind of tough.
It's hard as fuck.
It was tough, and I kept slipping. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure that I was being respectful, but I kept slipping out of the them to the her and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, man, it's just going to take some concentration.
It's practice. It's a practice. It's even for me, I will misgender myself.
Yeah.
So I don't get upset when people misgender me. It's when they actively are not trying.
Got you. Okay.
That's when I'm like, okay, we need to have a conversation.
So here's why, and I appreciate that. And I think, I would think at a base level, like a normal human being would be able to be like, well, what's normal, right? A compassionate human being would be able to say, if this is how this person wants me to refer to them, easy enough, boom, right? So once I started practicing that the other day, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna need to concentrate, but I got this. But there are those who would say, once you get to the point, you know, where it's like niece, the form of that is nibbling. It's like, damn, I gotta remember that too, fam. Like, damn, kid. Like, I gotta carry the Rolodex with me. But I'm willing to try.
Flexing,
but
yeah.
This is the reason I'm asking this, is because I think it's a beautiful thing for an audience to be able to hear that people that's sitting in multiple pinpoint angles around the circumference of the discussion can talk these real life issues with it and the nuance with it.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think that there's something where we get stuck, because think about all the words that are introduced into our lexicon every year.
Okay.
Ebonics, slang, like all of that beautiful language that evolves every single year.
Right.
New words are being put in the dictionary every single day.
You are right.
And so the fact that people are having such a hard time with this, with gender, it's like, well, you can use this, that, and the other that you appropriated from this group of people. Ain't no problem using that every darn day.
Yeah.
Like, I truly feel like we have been taught to have this resistance or uncertainty or this fear around certain things. Master's tools.
No.
Master's tools.
No, for no doubt. But you know what? That makes me think of this whole thing, because, you know, I grew up obviously emceeing, wordsmithing, and that sort of thing. Super into it. I appreciate someone with vocab and all that sort of thing. And I remember getting pissed off when I felt like certain words were being modified over time. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, people would say, you know, if someone could withstand a lot of damage, that person is showing resilience. Whereas now, resiliency is able to be used as the word. Beforehand, there was a time several years ago, you wouldn't actually see resiliency. You'd see the form, the proper form would be resilience. Mm-hmm. Same with relevance and relevancy. And there are plenty other words. I heard bigly's in the dictionary now.
What?
You know, come on now.
What is it?
Bigly. Your boys
Bigly.
Yeah.
Like extra big?
Like Trump saying, no, I performed really well, tremendously, very bigly. Trump, that type of bigly. Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. But here's where I'm going with this. So I remember a time where, like, I'd get pissed off when people were saying the word like irregardless, all these other sort of things. And because I cared so much about the word, right? My mother, brilliant woman, had to say to me one time, in recent times actually, she was like, yeah, but Brandon, you know, language is dynamic. To your point, and I want to circle back to you. She's like, language is dynamic and it changes over time. Mm-hmm. And you can't really be upset about it because that is the nature of language. There's another quote from this cat, Matt Dillahunty. He actually happens to be an atheist, and he does a lot of atheist debates and that sort of thing. And one thing he often says to people is that words don't have meanings, they have usages. And I thought about that and I was like, damn, that's the fucking truth. Because it doesn't matter if bad means something has befallen you of misfortune. If over time a populace of people continually use bad to mean the opposite of that, its usage has changed,
Right.
and it will now essentially indicate the opposite of that, right? So it doesn't have an inherent meaning that can't change. And so I think what you're speaking to is this sort of thing. But the reason I bring that up is because I, even as a wordsmith who gives a fuck about such things, found myself swimming against the tide, like, oh fuck, like, you know what I mean? Like I had to grow to the thought process of, there are other words that may need to be introduced and changed, and why not these?
Right.
Especially if these are actually addressing something that society has left unaddressed or misaddressed.
Agreed. And like, to stay on that note, language to me is a form of magic. In my magic practice, it's manifesting through your words, through your actions, right? That's how we make things so. And so when our language evolves, because our people are evolving, we need to be practicing that magic to make it stronger, like you were saying. Like over time, that's just going to be a part of our, if we allow it to be so. As a society, it'll just be a natural part of how we talk and how we see the world. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. It's funny you mentioned that, because that was part of the frustration I had when I would hear people misusing words over time. We're having a parallel combo of one describing, you know what I mean, the non-binary thing, and then the one with just words in general. But I would get upset because I felt like people were they were not using the words, because they weren't using the words properly. They're almost drawing the power and the value out of them. It would be like if there was a spell or incantation and you haphazardly say it with no intent behind it, no purpose behind it, no meaning behind it, in a monotone voice or some bullshit like that. You know what I mean?
Well, were they doing that, or were they just redefining?
Oh, demons of the dark earth, rise from the dead and
God.
come and bring that to everyone here.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
We burned some stage after that.
But my point is this, though. I really felt like that in a similar sense to where nothing gets under, well, there are plenty of things that get under my skin, but I always raise an eyebrow when every word out of someone's mouth when they describe everything is, it was amazing. Well, now what is the power of the word amazing? Because it used to mean to bring amazement to you. Awesome used to mean to instill awe in someone, but damn, if I give you my credit card and you give it back to me and you say, hey, I need it signed, and I sign it, and you're like, awesome, and you take it away, damn, was it? Well, what's not awesome, And so I had this hang up for a minute, Goddess, of like, man, people don't care about the power of words. So here's my point, I suppose. They will sling around any type of word and substitute it for another, not recognizing that the magnitude of some and the force of some and the weight of some actually vary and could be used differently. And instead, we're just using them willy-nilly like that. Now, that really doesn't have as much to do with this conversation, the binary and non-binary combo. But when we were talking about the power of words, I think that's where my frustration was coming at from some point.
I see what you're saying. Have you seen so the book is Pygmalion, but the movie is what is it?
It's called Pygmalion.
No. But
there
like,
is
it's
one
like,
called that.
The book is, but like the movie is called with Audrey Hepburn. Is it My Fair Lady? My Fair Lady?
Oh.
And like the guy is a linguist.
Back in the day.
Yeah, the guy's a linguist, and he's like, oh, why can't the English learn to speak?
Okay,
and he talks about how America hasn't spoken English for years. It's like, yeah, we haven't spoken English because we have a different kind of English.
That's true.
Like,
I understand. Okay.
Like every area has their own language and word usage, and so I don't know. It's really complex because the words we use to weave our intention is different than other people would use to weave.
True enough.
So I guess it comes down to intention. So if you're intentionally not trying to use language to acknowledge my gender, we can circle back around now, then you are erasing me.
What does that mean? What does
Oh
that
my
mean?
gosh.
What does that mean to someone who may have been doing it, doesn't realize that they were doing it, but now is listening to this and maybe opening to their thoughts to how could I potentially understand it and change my behavior?
Do your research. Like, make it your intention.
What if this is the extent of the research they'll do is listening to
Well,
this
then that's
podcast?
their own damn shortcoming.
You're not going to help them out here? You're not going to help them out?
Oh, okay. So let me
you're
go
on the
back to
fucking
being a
podcast.
teacher.
You in that seat.
Yeah, like let me. Whew, I got a place to speak now, and I got to utilize it. So let's put it like this: if you every day walked around and were called by the wrong name and by the wrong gender every single day, no matter where you went, and you knew that was just the natural order of things, where people didn't care to know, didn't care to ask, didn't care to listen to why you want to be called your name, how would that make you feel? Like you are invisible. And not only that, but you're being told you don't matter. Like you don't have a voice in who you are. Every time, like, so I wrote an article about this. I was going to the doctor, like my first OBGYN visit for a while, because I had such a traumatizing visit where my gynecologist was calling me girly, which, first of all, even if I didn't identify as a woman, not okay, as she is in my vagina. No.
A bit patronizing too.
Yes,
you know
patronizing this white woman calling me girly. And I know she probably meant in an endearing way, but like on my medical records at the time, it did say I was non-binary.
Okay.
So
that's something that's stated.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea when they would have begun to start stating that on medical records?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
I'm sorry,
And I
didn't mean
don't
to
think
interrupt
I don't know if it's universal yet. Like I don't know if everyone does it.
you. Oh, surely not.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone does it, but just every time someone calls me she, her, it puts this little mark in me that I'm not worthy. It's like that reiteration. It's like walking. If you're Black, you know what it's like to walk around this earth and feel like you have to apologize for your skin.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? We were having this conversation the other day, my daughter and I, and it's cool because we kind of go on these like info quests when we're speaking with each other, trying to, or in an effort to reach an understanding we may not currently have. And I think, I know everyone's struggles are different, and the different lines of society have different challenges and that sort of thing. But one thing that I think made it very easy for us to click and be like, was to say, what if a Black kid was albino, and everywhere he went, he knew he was Black, his parents were Black, his nose was widened, he had all of the Afrocentric features, but his skin was pale and white. And what if everywhere he went, people marked him as white, referred to him as white, while in front of other people, while he was there as if he wasn't in the room, said, yeah, here's my white friend, all those sorts of things. And that was very easy for us to identify with because me and my daughter are both already Black. So we're already sitting in the driver's seat for taking this trip of understanding. Mm-hmm. And that was like, oh, so even if someone may have been assigned this way or appeared this way or anything to that effect, to know on the inside that that's not actually the case, but constantly have to navigate
swim
against
in it. Swim in it.
It was actually quite enlightening, which is always a dope feeling when you're solo and you didn't even really catch it from it externally just yet, but to come then get an external validation of it and to get some more information and more enlightenment insight is cool.
Right.
I want to ask you something. Because there was a reason. I wasn't trying to get you to tell me you used to be a fan of my music. I was just, look.
I no longer am.
No, that's fucked up. Because there's a 57% chance it's true. No. So check it out, though. from that, you know, those very few interactions, that was it. That's all we really knew of each other for the most part. But then social media came along, and I know that I think I was on a friend on your friends list. I could have sworn, correct me if I'm wrong, did I not see a post from you at one point that said you were celebrating and you were like, yo, finally going to my dream job to the Netherlands to be a sex therapist. Was that a real thing?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so that is
right.
no. Wait. Wait. Okay.
First off, I'm right. I needed to know if I was right. So good.
I did post that, and other opportunities came along, and I didn't actually end up doing it, and I'm still thinking about doing it.
Okay.
There's a lot to that because so the reason why I felt like I needed to go and get education in psychology is to, first of all, show up better for my clients, especially like on the table, you know, people are not just experiencing physical pain.
Right.
The physical is a manifestation of the spiritual and the emotional. So I wanted to do that, but I also felt like I needed to have these titles in order to prove my worth. Like, oh, I'm an LMT, I'm this, I'm that. And so therefore, like, you should come to me. And so now I'm really thinking long and hard about that before I jump into furthering that, because I think there's other ways of getting that education where I don't have to spend a lot of money because I'm still paying off some bills for for school. So I would still love to live outside of the U.S. And if the opportunity comes, I mean, I ain't gonna turn down no like scholarship or anything. I'm just saying, my bags are packed.
Right.
So yeah. But to go back to your question about like what would I tell someone, it starts with this: making a safe space to let people know that they can be their authentic selves when they are talking to you.
Okay.
So I always introduce myself. Hi, my name is Goddess. I use they, them, their pronouns. That way, everyone around me knows that, first of all, I know what I'm pronouns.
Yeah.
And that also I'm comfortable talking about it. And I'm using my pronouns to let it know that everyone, you're safe to use your pronouns with me. There's this thing called, well, I call it like advocacy pronouns, where people like kind of, I don't want to say flippantly, they're doing it with intention, but they'll use like they pronouns in order to advocate for people who are not on the binary. And I used to not have a problem with that. And then someone explained it to me who is trans. It's
Can you give us an example for the listeners?
So say you're in a meeting and someone is like, I go by she, they. Okay. Now, they might not be using advocate pronouns. They might actually identify as both she and they, because you can you can have different ways of identifying. Okay. That's fine. But if you're doing it in order to say that you are standing for the people who actually utilize that, that's actually making it more unsafe for us. Yes. It's like people who are like, oh, I'm black. No.
Right. Why, Rachel?
White,
I got
white.
you.
Like, yes, exactly. So it's safer for us if you use the pronouns that you actually identify with, and if you're not sure what pronouns you're comfortable with, that's okay.
Right.
Like, flex it. Use what feels right for the day, but don't do it to be an advocate, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
It's not safe.
So what's the worst part of being a healing practitioner or practitioner of the healing arts?
That like, is it a Jesus complex or something? Like, people...
Assuming you're involved with dark arts?
Oh, well, no, not that. But also that.
Okay.
I feel like when I say witch, then that's when people are like, oh my gosh, they're going to like curse me. No.
We had a great witch on. Her episode will air a little later.
Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to hear it. But no, that idea that like, I can take away your pain. Like, I'm going to solve your problems. Okay. Especially being in a body that passes as a Black woman. For centuries, we have been the caretakers of not only our own but whites. And so that I'm here to support you on your journey, and to share with you the tools that I have, but I am not all powerful. And that does pose a problem for many people in this work.
Yeah. Not to parallel this to like the corporate world, but I just happened to be at some an ATD conference recently. I can't remember the cat's name. I will put it in the. We'll make sure to put it in the comments in the description if we figure out this dude's name. But he was the keynote speaker at this big thing. People who are involved in learning and development and that sort of thing from the corporate world. All these different corporations come together once a year, and it happened this year. And the dude said something to the effect of people don't leave companies because of the leaders. It's more so, or they don't stay at companies because of good leaders. They stay because the environment has been created in such a way that they can have the type of conversations they need to be able to have the reassurance they need, both in their value, their worth, and that sort of thing. For me, that ties into what you're saying from the standpoint of look, I am not the end all be all sort of thing, nor could I be. But what I can do is help you learn how to nurture an environment and create an environment in which you can flourish and thrive, maybe more so.
Right.
Is that, would you say that I have a bit of a handle on where you're coming from?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Because, like I said, I'm not healing you. Like you're actually doing it. So like in a session with me, we work together to move the muscles and work the muscles in order to retrain it. First of all, we create a state to let your body know it's safe and it's welcome. Okay. And then we work with the muscles to retrain them to work in unison with each other, you know? And we listen to your body. Sometimes I like to say I'm like a mediator for your body and your soul, you know, because we lose touch with our bodies. Our bodies have an awesome way of protecting us and compensating for things. And so we kind of just check out.
Did you, we had a prior guest on who was a licensed massage therapist. Have you heard that episode yet?
No, I haven't.
Can I, for the listeners, because we're getting tons of feedback asking this question, how come you haven't listened to the episode yet?
First of all, I don't think I saw on there when I looked last. Okay. So I'm going to stick with that reason. Okay. I'm going to stick with that reason. I didn't see it. I listened to the tree trimmer one and the diversity.
For all of our listeners out there, make sure to check out episode 4 featuring the licensed massage therapist.
I'm going to check it out now. Well, not now, but
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Buzzsprout. Find it where you may. But we asked that particular guest about shiatsu, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on when it comes to massage. What are your thoughts on like wounds? You know, our body storing tension and that essentially turn into wounds. Could those wounds be detrimental to us over time and all that sort of thing? And whether or not that factors into your practice, what you do, your philosophy, and all that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Have you heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
I think I've heard of, never read it.
So
you know the author?
Oh my gosh, I should.
It's all good.
Yeah. Well, can you add it to
with our next million viewers, we'll have a second producer here who will be responsible for looking shit up.
All right.
And so next time we'll have it right there on the spot.
All right.
Boom.
So what was I gonna say? Now I have to think again. Okay. So it's about PTSD.
Okay.
And this doctor had a lot of experience with people who were coming out, like veterans, Army vets. And he talks about how when our bodies go and think of an animal, when they're in a flight, fight, freeze mode, they usually do this thing where they shake it off afterward. Have you ever seen a dog do that? Yeah. It's like a stress reliever, right?
Yeah, I've seen that.
We as humans, I think because our brains work a little bit differently, don't do that anymore. We hold it in. So when you go through a traumatic event or chronic traumatic events where it's being repeated over and over again, your body is storing all of that information. Our brains aren't just holding it, because our brains are like, it's not just our brain, it's a full system throughout our body.
I get you.
So there's what we call in the I don't know, methodology that I learned, which is body insight, that different parts of the body store different types of emotions.
Okay.
So say you hurt your arm, or you hurt your hand at one point in your life. But you notice that when you get really stressed out at work, your hand starts hurting again.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't figure out why. It might have something to do with feelings of inadequacy, or not being able to actualize what you're actually trying to actualize. Yeah. And that's not finite. It's not like the end all be all of the solution to what's going on with your body, but it is something to look at, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when, it could be, when you think of people who could be skeptical of such things, and I think they try to separate this from what they may deem to be traditional science. Actually, everything you just said to me actually sounds rather scientific, considering chemicals being released in us is what causes emotions. If there's a particular part of our body that maybe has an injury or something, and or you start to feel insecure or inadequate, a certain chemical is released. That mixing or interacting with any substance somewhere else could cause a feeling, a reaction, stimulation, tension, lack thereof. While I certainly don't have all the pieces to fill in here, as opposed to, I think, someone jumping right to saying, oh, well, that's bullshit, dude. Like, how is it feeling going to bring back some old pain? As I think about it, and I just kind of expand a little bit, while I may not be the person smart enough to fill in the blanks of how it could end up actually being rather scientific, it feels like it could be. It feels like there doesn't have to be a disconnect between the two.
Right, there doesn't have to. And okay, so think about it another way. If you think of people who are training for Olympic events, they're training their muscles to be in a certain type of stasis in order to complete the task, right?
Yeah.
So they're constantly, like, say if you're a FFC, that's a thing, FFC fighter, and you're constantly doing these moves, right?
Hold on, I can't, just because I'm an MMA head, I can't let you proceed without this. So you said UFC, which is the biggest promotion. It's the biggest promotion of the fighting, this particular sector of combat sports, which is known as mixed martial arts. Go ahead.
Okay, wait, so correct me, what?
So mixed martial arts is just the sport. It's the combination of multiple disciplines: wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai. UFC is the most popular promotion of mixed martial arts. Much like NFL is the most popular football promotion, but there is a Canadian Football League. There is an XFL.
I see what you're saying. Okay, my bad. Okay, so let's boxer.
Boom.
You boxer. Okay. So you're constantly doing this move, right, to gain muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so when you're presented with an obstacle, like someone's coming at you, your body automatically knows the move to make because you've practiced it so long. Think about that for someone who was beaten as a child repeatedly.
Yeah.
It's the same type of training. Yeah. It's not always intentional, but like that. When that person is constantly being put in that state, they go to a certain type of body positioning.
I know it well.
Yes, exactly. Like your body changes its chemical makeup in order to get you into a state where you can run away or respond in whatever way you need to. So when you get that stimulus later on that makes you think of that moment, you're gonna go into that.
Damn, dude, that's super interesting. And I've actually, I remember about 10 years ago was the first time I realized that I was walking around holding my breath.
I do that too,
and
in
not
Iowa.
breathing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And growing up, particularly on some street shit, there's that term, chin up, chest out. And I remember that from when you're walking down the street in the city, coming from the city, and there's heads on the block, and they all out there, and they're doing whatever. Like, you can't walk by with your head down, or you can't do A, B, or C, because you will then become a target. And so instead, you're always at the ready. You're tensed up. When I watch prison documentaries, I see people the same way. The manner in which they walk, the manner in which they sit. People have commented on the way in which I eat food. When I sit at a table, they say it's almost like I'm guarding it, like I'm got like 2 cage doors
so
around
it's
it.
precious.
Yeah, and I feel the pressure and tension. I don't think about it, but if I ever take the time to think about it, sometimes there's a pressure and tension that's all along like the top of my arms, that I don't realize that I'm walking around with or sitting with. And I realized a while back, probably about 10 years back, I remember one day I was just sitting, and I had my chin up and my chest out, just like you walk down the street anytime, just to let heads know, hey, dude, don't fuck around. You know what I'm saying? And I realized, hold on, dude, I'm in my house. Ain't nobody in here, And I was like, so chill out, B. And when I chilled out, I went, fam, my shoulders dropped about 2-3 inches. I exhaled. I realized that I had breath held up there, and I realized that there's a certain tension. There's a tension I felt like I've been holding for years in my shoulders, always being ready for the squabble, where you got to turn around and squabble, do that sort of thing. I know very well the one about, if you catch enough whoopings and beatings back in the day, if you get close to your mama, even if she reach up to scratch her head, it can make you be like, oh, shit.
My mom would grab the stick to stir the pot. Oh my God, spanking stick. No.
You know what I'm saying? So I know that well.
Yeah.
So I could definitely hear what you're saying there. You know what? The funny thing, when you talked about the how animals shake things off and we tend not to shake things off, you said we hold it in. Before you said we hold it in, the thought that came to my mind is we constrict, and if you constrict, you're doing exactly what my muscles, what I'm referring to when I talk about the muscles and the tension in my shoulders and the chest over years. Yeah, you're tightening up, which made me go one further and think of the natural position that we return to in the womb, fetal. You curl, you ball up, you turtle up, you shell up. That's just something that came to my mind. I didn't read any book, and I didn't go to Fort Collins, the Healing Arts Institute of Fort Collins.
And to be fair, this isn't just what I learned there, but that it was an amazing school. It has since closed down.
Why'd it close?
From what I heard, let me not start rumors. I don't know why it closed down. I think it has to do with the licensing. Like something changed with, I think, AMT something was who they were getting licensed from, and when that changed, they just couldn't keep up with that qualification. But it was a really good school. So now I forgot. Man, Coney.
Hey,
okay,
it'll come back.
Well, okay. So, childlike positions. So what I've noticed since moving back, is this tendency to be in childlike states. So I wrote it down. So as adults, if we were not taught how to be fully in our bodies, how to respond to certain stimuli like criticism or even love, like across the spectrum, different things that we're going to have different reactions to. If we weren't taught how to healthily deal with those issues as children, we're walking into adulthood still in this childlike mentality.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm seeing is people with their eyes down, not saying hello, not even want to look outside of their box. And then when they do get some type of stimuli that is too overwhelming, they throw a tantrum or they act out, just like a child would do. Yeah. And it's not saying don't act childish. What I'm saying is there's a precious part of us that wasn't nourished.
Right.
And it's time to nourish that. And so that's one of the reasons why I came back, was to nourish that in myself, but also to shed some light on that too, because I think we need that. It's time.
Yeah. I think I cut you off when you were getting into the worst part of being the healing practitioner.
Oh.
I said dark arts. You said that too.
That too. Yes.
But.
So I think I already covered about, like the star syndrome, you know, like, oh, you're gonna heal everything.
Oh, you did.
Which is nuance.
You did.
But the part about people kind of stepping back, or having like assumptions about what that means.
Okay.
That kind of is a little bit more tender for me because I was raised in a very conservative family, and told a lot of things that I now realize were not true about who I was. And so, when people shrink back from who I am, it's sad. It's like I feel like they're like, oh my God, you're a monster and I got to run away from you, or like want to throw some garlic at me or something, which whatever.
Might cook with that garlic.
I know. I would use that garlic as a form of protection,
you
man.
Here, like, you grocery
I'm
shopping for me.
Give me some of that garlic. So that's really hard because it distances people that aren't ready to have that conversation, and that's a lot of fucking people.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And that's okay because like other people will come in, right, that are ready to have those conversations. But it's just sad. It's sad to see how fear plays in our society. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you were writing an article, or that you had written an article. This was after you said a rather traumatizing issue with OBGYN. Where can this article be found? What is the nature of that location in which it can be found? Let's talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find that article on sunseedcommunity.com, sunseedcommunity.com, or look me up or Sunseed on Facebook. I'm actually about to do another article about gender pre-colonization, and I talk a little bit about what we talked about today. So I'm looking forward to that.
No, and you put out, I don't know if you're done with this particular effort, but you put out a call for people giving sound bites and testimonials to why their body isn't an apology. Is that something you're done with, or by the time this episode's air, would you still want people to send information regarding that?
I mean, if you have something you want to share, please send it in. It'll probably have already aired because it's going to come out February 29th. However, check out the podcast. It's the Sunseed Community Podcast. And that's going to be a rocking episode. That's going to be badass.
So tell the people, what is Sunseed all about? Let us know what the deal is here.
So it took a fucking village to get the goddess that you hear before you today. And so I found myself like you. I found myself having these dope ass conversations with my fam, my community, and I was realizing that this needs to be shared with other people.
Yes.
So that's what happened with Sunseed. Is it's a collective thought process on how we come back to wholeness, how we decolonize our mind, degender our minds, and heal, because there's just a lot of pain that we carry in these bodies.
Okay. So anyone would be welcome at Sunseed Community. Anyone of any.
Yes.
That sounded tentative than a motherfucker.
Because I'm intentional about my shit, and so I'm not gonna let just anyone come and steamroll other people's voices.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm particular. I'm not gonna say just anybody. It's a safe space. It's a safe space, and it's an intentional space. And if you're not down with that intention, you ain't down with Sunseed.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. What other things are there efforts coming up? Anything other? I know you've got that podcast going down. I know you mentioned recently that and this may have been maybe a month or two back at this point, that you don't want to box what Sunseed is into any sort of category just yet. You're not necessarily, it's a nonprofit, it's a business, or it's this, that, the movement. I understand that it doesn't really need all of that. You know, we don't need to be described to be.
Amen.
So I guess I'm not asking that as much as
what's in the works, kind of.
Yeah, what else is in the works besides this podcast that's going to be dropping February 29th, And what are all the outlets that's going to be available on? Is it primarily at?
It's on SoundCloud, but you can find the SoundCloud link on my website and on the Facebook page. So right now, I'm actually working on getting my LMT license. Finally, that schooling gonna pay off. So I'm working on that. And also, what else is going on? This collective in Boulder, Colorado called The Wild Ride is going to be going on tour. My friend Emma is the creator of that. And so they're hoping to come to Iowa. We're still trying to figure out this place. So if people know of spots where this would be welcome, we're going to be doing a workshop on queering spirituality. So
do you know, is it of a website or somewhere people could go to find out about The Wild Ride?
So The Wild Ride you can find on Instagram and on Facebook. They're working on the website right now. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, Goddess Carol, on Facebook, only with 1 D, because Facebook is funny about what names you use on Facebook. Yeah. So that's mainly what's going on right now, really building up Sunseed and watching that flourish. So
that's dope to hear. What are you going to walk away from here and 3 to 4 hours from now, be like, oh, fuck, I should have brought that up? What will that be?
Oh, fuck, I should have brought that up.
Because if you knew, you say it right now, right?
No, I thought you were going to be like, what are you going to walk away and just be like, oh, thank goodness.
No. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity. We've talked a lot, and I've been so ready to be informed along with the audience today that I know I guided a lot of it, but I want to make sure you weren't deprived of the opportunity to talk about anything in particular you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really just saying, like, you know, we all know how it is. A couple of hours from now, you can be like, damn, I could have mentioned such and such. This is going down 3 weeks from now. Is there anything coming to the mind that you'd like to touch on?
No, I mean, please check out Sunseed community. Look me up. Come check out my work. It's amazing. I'm not gonna lie. It is like amazing. It's awesome. On Spike.
Just as much as that fucking glass
and
of water.
Also, this is a side note, but loosen up those buttholes, y'all. Like, relax your muscles.
This isn't mandatory and literal so all the cisgender males of heterosexual variety out there, just so you know.
This is not about that. I'm talking about because I'm learning
not a directive. It's more of
oh my God. No. Let me correct. I'm learning this in my own practice of we hold a lot in our wombs. The seed of the soul, right? Like loosen, like just be in your body and feel what it feels like when you finally realize what you were holding. Yeah. Let that shit relax. And if you can't, there's people here who will support you in that process.
Word up.
Yeah.
Word up. Goddess, it's been killer having you on.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed your time here.
Loved it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you've heard today, please comment below. If you've gone through an experience similar to anything you've heard here today, comment below on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're checking out all the other outlets as well. But go and check out Sunseed Community. Check out The Wild Ride. Whether or not you may be interested in it from a particular feeling as if you may identify with a particular walk of life, if for no other reason, go educate yourself on something so you can form a slightly more informed opinion about it, especially before finding yourself in a rigid disposition towards people who aren't like you. But if you dug a little deeper, you might find a more like you than you thought. But other than that, you know how we do out here. This is your host, PHATEROC. Glad to have our guest, Goddess, on today, along with producer Mike. This is WTFP, the Worst Things First podcast. We out. Much love for rocking with this episode of WTFP. If you enjoyed what you heard today and want to hear more honest discourse with interesting people from ordinary walks of life, please like and share this clip. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every walk of life has a downside, and we begin the conversation there. This is Worst Things First, the podcast.